Hi, this is Scott Schnars, and I'm here with Edan Gottlieb for our fourth episode of Lunch Money with Scott and Edan. And this is a follow-up episode to the one that we did last week where we discussed if sales is more art or science. And one of the things that changed in the world a little bit is AI. We know that AI right now is changing everything. It's changing how we work. It's changing how we sell, even how we think. And Don, I don't know if you saw that article about the guy who was like really pausing a long time to find words because he has AI doing so much thinking for him, he can't process as fast as the AI can. Um, but there's a big question here, and that goes back to the conversation that we had last week, and that's, will AI tilt the balance between art and science and sales? We already know that sales is both art and a science, and we talked about that last week, but with AI rapidly taking over the tasks that everybody's doing, and that is from prospecting to forecasting to follow-up to podcasting in this case, will science come to dominate the future of sales, or will art and the human side of it still be as important? And I think the thing that we want to talk about today is like, yes, AI is definitely shaking things up, but the balance isn't as simple as it seems.
Yeah, and this is probably going to be, one of many, because the AI topic, as we dive into it, is so big and so encompassing. And I think there's a lot of hype in the market around, oh, well, AI, let's take it to the extreme. We'll replace sales, or you don't need sales anymore. To your point about the science and art, it's like sales, it became so scientific with all these tools. You're like, hey, take it to the next level and just automate the whole thing. Because if it's just science, you can just automate it. So I think it would kind of slip into that point of the conversation of like, is it, replacing sales? Is AI sufficient enough to replace sales? And I think as we got that question and kind of connected to it, even myself, I think Craig was playing around. I mentioned earlier, I was able to think about it from 9 different angles, and some of them are contradicting to each other. What the answer is, so I don't think we'll have a clear answer.
Pentagon of ideas
Ooh. So I don't know
across
if
the
we'll have a
board.
clear answer, but I think we might be able to get a good stab out of the, next 10,
Yeah,
15 minutes discussion.
I think like, we're all seeing that, to your point, like if it was all science, you would just automate it and send everybody home for the week. I think we all see that AI is making the science of sales sharper and faster and more concise. We can analyze millions of data points in just seconds. I was talking to a company last week that's analyzing legal data, and like just the amount of data that they can look at and ascertain, hey, should I have an attorney spend 2 hours working on this contract? Or can our AI just figure out like what the details are and provide that to the attorney? Those things are really critical. So in sales, AI is helping you to do things like prioritize leads and predict customer behavior and even optimize your sales pitch, which is something that I think that Zoom and Gong should have been working on years ago. But now we have tools like Salesforce's Einstein, which can tell you which leads are more likely to close and why. We've got, well, I just mentioned Gong, but there are platforms like Gong and Chorus that look at your sales calls and tell you when you said X, your close rate improved by 20%. There's a company that I'm working with right now called Lead Off, which is doing an even better job of that because it's taking your entire team and looking at all the things that your best reps say and then train the remainder of your sales team on here's all the behaviors that your best reps are doing. When you have things like forecasting, you don't have any more gut-based guesses. The AI can predict your pipeline. We had Clary at Cloudinary, which I thought was a great tool because it gives you this amazing accuracy on your historical data. So what AI is doing is it's taking over that repetitive, time-consuming tasks that just eat up the rep's time, and it frees them to focus on what matters the most, and that's the art of sales. It's that building the relationships and closing the deals. And I'd love to get your take on, now that we can outsource a lot of this busy work, right? Like every salesperson on the planet hates populating Salesforce, and there's amazing tools that can help out with that. A company called Gong, which is the founder lives in your neighborhood, doing that to populate Salesforce so that you can go build those relationships. I guess like, how do you, as a salesperson, do you start to give up the science of sales in favor of what the AI is doing so that you can focus on the art and building the human relationships?
So I don't think you necessarily give out or give up the science. I think you're just much more empowered now to run more sophisticated level of science with less effort. It's a tricky balance because I think the slippery slope, I think, or I feel like that happens in the market around that one is that you start exactly as you said with, hey, there's some repetitive tasks that are, I don't, need to do them anymore. And it will be a waste of time and talent, right, as you have to do it. But from there, it gets into, is it some of the stuff I do to compensate for like the human aspect, right? So I'm trying to see how good you forecast based on how you can judge it. So I'm collecting all this data. But let's say if I take the human out of the equation, I don't need this anymore, right? The machine will do it perfectly, execute my playbook perfectly. And so I think there's a big
That's probably
mishmash.
another topic is forecasting accurately, art or science.
Yes, but I felt like I had an easy answer here of like, it's very simple. You got to, and you could list out all these tasks that a salesperson has to do, or an SDR has to do, and the things that are really nothing about added value from an individual human should be automated, and AI should be catching up with. I shouldn't be spending hours researching because I'm just collecting data. I actually get to kind of a conclusion that you could break it into like the art and science. You have two groups. You have kind of collecting of data, collecting of information, and the other group is delivering value. Now it's big word, so it's not that great. But
Do you see that as two separate teams, like an
so
ops team that collects data and then the sales team that does the value piece of it?
so I don't think it's just that. I think it's throughout the process, right? So it's the collecting and communicating, but it's moving data around. It's collecting information and putting them all around. Whether it's the how do I do the outbounding aspects, or how do I communicate with my customers at first, or how do I even have my first demo, or all these kind of things that are send information about the product and how it great fits, or comparing it to others. So all these things are just moving information that traditionally were part of what the salesperson did, and it kind of connects to our conversation last time, right? It's like I need to bring different value as a rep at this point. Versus I can connect the dots and figure out, oh, if you got all these things, then you probably should be thinking about that combination. And if you want to get that financed in your company, let me help you. How do you navigate around your organization? So kind of you have to start delivering value, not just relaying other information or collecting other information. I don't know if that was making sense or too abstract for it.
I think that it makes sense, right? So you have a let's just play this out, right? Let's say I'm trying to sell to I'll use Tesla, right? Like, you could have a team of people who are scouring things, and it might even be a team of people. This might just be like an LLM that is scouring the 10Ks and scouring press releases
Yep.
and scouring blogs and podcasts and all of the stuff that happens that is related to Tesla. And then you could have that ascertain like, hey, you know what? Based on all of this data, we think that you could go sell your product to this person. And in fact, there's a company out of Denver called Cloverleaf that does that with data around municipalities. They scour all of the town halls and go, oh, Pleasanton's looking for a new waste management company. Cloverleaf will take that data and send that to all the waste management people. And that's what they're selling. It's a very, very cool company. You could build something like that for sales teams for enterprise software or for whatever product you're selling that just goes and scours all of this publicly available data. And it can probably start to infer that, oh, based on all of these things, you could probably, this Tesla could probably use this product. And then it's up to the salesperson to apply the art of that knowledge.
Yeah. And that's just one piece. I mean, if you look at the entire sales process and the engagement, there's a lot of kind of, maybe I'll call it trading and transferring of information, identifying who they are, and then even trying to communicate with them. And then when they come on board, for them to know that, hey, be aware of this. Here's the awareness. Let's start having an interaction or a conversation or things like that. And everything I think related to information being moved around could be AI. And it has a lot of, and I think the market right now is very segmented because everybody found a niche of information that it can go play with, and they created a product for it. But the overall play of like, if I'm just thinking about it, if it's information play that is available somewhere, and then could be AI. Creating value, that will be the role of like a human being, that you'll need a salesperson for it. And yeah, good.
Yeah, but I was going to say, you gave a great metaphor last week when we were doing this recording, where we were talking about a salesperson that we both know. And I made a comment that this person was far too much art and not enough science. And that's part of the reason they didn't do particularly well. You even took it a step further and said, we think about all of the different mediums that artists can use. This person just has stone and a chisel, right? Whereas, maybe you need to evolve and you go from stone and chisel to bronze to paint and oil and canvas to watercolors to neon to, you need to have your art keep evolving and you need to be able to work in a lot of different mediums to be successful. How do you see that tying in with AI? Does AI become another arrow in your quiver, tool in your toolbox, whatever metaphor you want to use? Or is AI the science piece of this where that's doing all of the science and doing all the predictability and you just need to show up and be charming?
So I think today, like at this point in time, it's probably just another arrow. It's an important, new type of weaponry that comes around. I think going forward, if you really take a step back and you look at the profession of sales, which I read somewhere, which was funny, that somebody said, it's a profession of sales is actually the oldest profession in the world, older than the other one that people usually refer to.
Right.
It went through evolutions, right? Well, whatever people here remember the stories about, there's the Xerox sales guys, and there was those went through evolution, and the sales people of today, or even over the last decade, are not the same people like from 2 or 3 decades ago. And so the profession keeps evolving and never stops. And I don't think it's never going to go away, but it's different. I think the AI is a different evolution of what do you need to do? Because think about it this way. And I think I mentioned it a little bit last time. What you need to do in order to get a transaction happening or sell to happen probably didn't change on a kind of overall structure ever. How you do it changed. And I think that's the thing that is changing right now. It's this, you have to create some sort of a connection in order to promote and solve somebody's problem and how to communicate that. And I think part of the evolution that we're going through now is that until now, in the last couple of decades, I own the information, and part of me building a relationship with you was through moving this information along to you and helping you with that. And I think going forward, I will have to build our relationship in a different manner. I'll have to provide some value by solving your problems or understanding or helping you navigate. So I will still need to build that connection. Now, I will preface that I know that the other thing that makes everything complicated today is when we talk about product-led growth and self-service and say, well, you don't need to create a connection. On the contrary, there's people that don't want to, you sell to developers, they don't want connection.
And I agree with that, by the way.
And I agree that we disagree with that. But it goes to another dimension of my 9, which depends on the configuration of what the transaction profile is, right? And if you try to put it on a 4x4, I think there's the low and high, and low and high is like the higher things get, whether it's the price or the complexity of the solution or the risk factor of what they have to take on or the decision-making process. The more complexity you introduce, the more you will need those kind of more sophisticated interactions or more complex interactions if they have to be sophisticated. Versus the simpler you get, the more you can then cater it with these mechanisms of automation and agents that are machine agents and things like that. And so I think that's another aspect of why the whole discussion is very confusing for everybody. And I mix everything up together.
I think that this is a really key insight. And if I paraphrase what you're saying down to a little soundbite, the more that AI automates the science, the more the human touch becomes that differentiator. And
yes,
probably the bigger the transaction you're doing, the more of that human connection you're going to need to do. We're talking about Riverside right now and the 19 or 29 or whatever dollars. Like, we don't need to talk to a person that's very commoditized. There's a million companies that do podcasting out there. But if you are, let's just talk about some of the deals that you and I did together. If you're Nike and you're buying a multi-million-dollar solution from Cloudinary, like that becomes a lot more art that goes into that.
Yeah, and even if I'm Nike and decide, for instance, that, as part of my marketing strategy, I'm going to launch a bunch of podcasts in every country in the world, and I would want to pick Riverside as my standard, right? I don't know. There'll be I wouldn't just buy the $30 share, plan over the web. There's a bunch of risk that I have to mitigate if this is going to be my choice as the CIO. So I think it's the conversation gets cluttered with all these different dimensions that's going on. But I think some of the fundamentals are always the same, right? The higher you go on the matrix on the complexity or risk or price, then there's more due diligence that you'll have to do. And it's less a transactional order fulfillment kind of motion. And the nature of what needs to be done, which is basically somebody with a problem and a vendor with a solution connects that and solving that problem. Some will have to connect with each other and build some kind of a relationship between them that is based on trust so they can move forward and do something together. How it gets done could now very, very differently.
Yeah. The I think it's really interesting. Like, and I just want to kind of go over maybe a couple of areas where AI can put some HDH or turbo or whatever you want to call it into the art. The personalization at scale, I think, is a huge one. And I think like there's pros and cons to that. I think that AI can go pull the insights, and we talked about that. Oh, hey, such and such prospect is such a product or they're hiring or whatever. I also think you need to be a little bit careful with that because you end up getting these agencies that just like slam and spam the shit out of you with like the same message over and over and over again. I do think that real-time coaching, we talked about this a little bit. Like if you were on a call and you had like the AI whisperer in your ear, that was like, "Hey, Edan, like you should ask about their timeline," or "Hey, like you're starting to see some sentiment that like starts to dip." Like maybe that's an opportunity to dig deeper. Had that AI bot in your ear, like that would be such a huge way to adjust your skill set for kind of amplifying that art. And then I think a third one is just like, there's so much data out there that you can become this like master storyteller where you're using the, AI is going and getting that data to help you back up your stories and make them more compelling so that you can say things like, let me walk you through how we saved this customer a bunch of money, or this is what we did. It drove a lot of more revenue. Like, I think when you have that hard evidence, it's going to hit a lot harder. But AI shift from maybe like from reps being task doers, and we've talked about this ad nauseam, right? Like it's going to be so critical over the next 10 years that salespeople become strategic advisors, or they're out. Like we don't need order takers any longer. Like we need people who are going to really, really dig deep into the challenges and how to fix real business problems. But if AI can help empower them to focus on creativity and problem solving and the relationship building, it just becomes this massive tool to help make that art a little bit more important than the science.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it would be more important. I think it's strengthening that. If we said it's 60-40 kind of
That's
thing,
fair.
it would just, supercharge that. By the way, I think in parallel, you'll have to work the skill sets and up level them so you won't be lopsided in your equation. The way I kind of gather these guys to points you were making, I think there's these areas of that AI will come very strongly immediately is around enablement, as you mentioned, the coaching and things like that, that really helps you on live environment. I think there's the insights of I can analyze a lot of data from a lot of data points, and some of the stuff that we work really hard to take us time will come out of that one. I think the whole enablement of the process and having it flow and the data collected and taking off the task of the people. And then there's you touched on a little bit about the agents part of, for these small transactions, do I need a human for it? Or is it sufficient for me to just finish through it and have the AI agent be able to answer my basic questions? I mean, when we work so hard on playbooks for these, SMBs and small businesses kind of thing, can it just be fulfilled by the agent without the sales rep? But I think all of them will be supercharged. I think right now, immediate thought, if I'm thinking of what can you have the individual rep and you got the manager, and kind of how they would, both of them could take advantage of it is adopt as many tools as you find there, play with as many as you can.
I think that's such an important action item.
Super important aspect right now to do it. And when you look at your hiring plans, try to think, can I free up more of my reps' time, invest in my existing reps versus just try to add more? They are spending a lot of time today on these admin works or this information gathering aspect of things that, again, an AI could do for you. Can you get more out of them from that one? Now, there's a different discussion to have. Do we even need sales reps with this, AI in there at all? Which I know some are preaching in the market that it's over. Robots doing the whole thing. And
I believe that if you are a average to below average salesperson or SDR, like you probably have a high likelihood of being replaced in the next 5 years. If you're just an order taker and you just want to, kind of shoot the shit with people and then take their money, it's probably not a long career trajectory for that kind of role. But if you're an SDR and you just like sending out emails via outreach, like you and I talked about this 6 years ago, like just outsource that to, a robot and have the robot push the button 5 times a day.
Yeah, I think the whole SDR structure the way it is has a major challenge to survive the AI revolution.
Yeah.
Because it's basically, nobody even likes doing that work. Not even the SDRs.
No, it's terrible.
But, I would say this, and I know it's not the topic for today. Again, I implemented a couple of these things and play with them because I really liked them and I really was looking for how do we get more of the team and how do we help the team not to do the stuff they hate. The thing that would get exposed really, really quick, though, is that you need to have all these answers to all these questions in order to automate them with the machine. And what really happens, if you think about it, is we've been using these teams to figure out the stuff that we didn't know. And it was kind of low risk because you basically, had a half price get them. And if they don't deliver the results, then they don't get the other half. So they're actually very motivated to go figure things out and get the answers to the questions and do all these trials and errors. And if you scrape the whole thing and you just need to feed the machine, you'll need to have the answers, which you don't know in many of the cases. By the way, this doesn't say just to young startups that are starting. Don't know. Some of the larger companies have holes in their story and their value proposition to different ICPs or all their ICPs. And I think if you look at it money-wise and say, hey, AI is going to save you, 50, 60, 70% of it, you won't. It could probably save you 40%, but it's not 100% safe. And there's other places have to invest and figure out how do I get all the answers right, because companies don't have all the answers.
Well, I think that I think one of the things that's really interesting is I think the companies that are going to win with AI, and we're kind of digressing from our topic here, but the companies that are going to win with AI aren't the ones who are going to use it to cut costs. I figure everybody is going to use it to cut costs. The ones who are going to figure out that, oh, hey, like we just scoured the last 5 years of your closed won data. And when you target the automobile manufacturing business, you have a 38% close rate versus your traditional 22% close rate. And it'll start to uncover these revenue generating opportunities for companies. And when they dig into that, then it's like, oh, wow, like we can go, we were able to trim $5 million, but that's like a short-term trim, but we were able to generate 10 million because we uncovered these new insights. To me, I feel like that's where the real value of this whole thing is going to go.
It's always been this, that the companies are looking for new technologies to supercharge what they do to grow faster versus to save are the ones that will win. It's a very competitive market out there. And I think you see it a little bit, by the way, in the macro numbers, because you could see that the overall kind of labor market in the US hasn't grown much. The efficiency and the productivity went up. And we just started kind of the AI part. Now, some of it is skewed because it has some stuff, but it doesn't matter. In general, kind of a direction is it's a little bit of an indication of it. But you're right. If you want to win, this is a supercharge.
So you hit on, I think, like a really valuable action item that anybody who is listening to this should take, and that is sales reps and sales leaders, they need to lean into AI and let it do the heavy lifting. God, I met a guy maybe like 6 or 9 months ago who was just like, oh, he thought it was a total fad. But I think like he's going to be out of a job, or I think he is out of a job, and it's probably not looking good if he doesn't grab onto this, right? Like you have to let the AI do the heavy lifting, like the data analysis and your task automation, your lead prioritization, so that you can focus on the high value activities. And then as a seller and a leader, you also have to focus on these skills that the AI can't replicate, which is your active listening and your empathy and your being present and your negotiating and your creative problem solving. Like if you can do those things and you're not just like that person who is blindly following whatever the AI tells you to do, I think a lot of people are just like, hey, ChatGPT, can you give me a script that I can do this? And they just like go through it verbatim and send out that email, and it becomes a bit of a disaster. But if you can use it as a 1-2 punch, like that's going to be great. I think that's going to be the most powerful thing for people.
I would say if you find yourself either busy trading or transferring of information or being an admin or supportive of a process, that's the wrong end of where you need to be. So immediately, as a rep and as a manager for your reps and for yourself as well, even for sales managers, right? Building comp plans, figuring out who performs better, what are the KPIs, all these things. You can accelerate what you do with using AI for these things. So immediately, if you're right now, anything that you're doing about information movement or accompanying a process, you should say within the first 3 months of the year, I should be able to have technologies that would do this instead of me. Otherwise, you're going to get outplayed.
Yeah. So I guess in closing, in this episode of Lunch Money with Scott Edan, where we like money, we hope that you like money too. I mean, the original question is AI going to change the weighting of art and science and sales? And the answer is absolutely. I think that science is going to become a bit more dominant in the mechanics of selling, but that art and that human touch is going to become a lot more essential because people are already starting to pick up like, oh, did I get this email from a robot? I have a friend and a robot tried to sell to him and he was really pissed about it because it was so evident that it was a robot. Again, if you're all art, like you need to start leveraging AI just to be able to work smarter. And if you're all science, you got to invest in the soft skills like we were just talking about. But I don't think that the future of sales isn't one or the other. I think it's still like we talked about last week. Excuse me, this blend of both. And I think the people who think about AI as a partner and not a replacement are going to be the ones who do the best.
I'll just add two things. One is it would replace some pieces, but it's not a replacement of the whole sales kind of profession. Whether it's going to change the balance is a good one. I think the immediate focus is going to change. People will focus on AI and on the science part of it. I think on the overall, again, it would stay anywhere between the 50-50, 60-40, whichever way it goes. The distribution will still stay like this to in order to get a transaction done. Even in the smaller or the lower kind of price points or risk factors or scope, there still are. It's just delivered in a different way. It wouldn't be salespeople that would need to deliver it, but somebody will have to figure out how do I connect with the people. But I think there's an immediate attention of the science now because of AI, and AI needs the science. Although you can create a lot of art with AI today. But
We will
you
save that
look
for
at that
another
art,
episode.
yeah. But I would say you look at that art and you know it's an AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Today you do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. We really appreciate it. If you have ideas or thoughts, leave them in the comments, either on YouTube or on LinkedIn. And thanks very much.
Thanks.